This is 3FM.
I think I've got a passion for it, really. I mean, I've done 8.5 years on Douglas Council, and I think that the next 5 years of Tynwald are going to be some of the toughest that this island's ever seen. I think we need people who've got a mixture of private sector experience and public sector experience to take the island forward. Because, to be perfectly honest, there's been a lot of decisions put off over the last 5 years that actually need addressing during this Tynwald. Constituency-wise in Douglas North, I think a big one is actually the infrastructure. A lot of the infrastructure on the estates has actually been neglected. We've got the new development of the road there on Johnny Watterson's Lane, which is a welcome development from my point of view. I think maybe there was a bit too much work done to the pavements, but the road surface was needed. But that's required really throughout the whole of the estates. You go around Governor's Hill and there's quite a few potholes, same round Tremode and the same round Williston, and they're just going to deteriorate further. And also quite a bit of community focus. I want to get Douglas North to feel as if it's one constituency. I think sometimes it feels that it's divided up into sectors like Williston, Governor's Hill, Tremode. I think it's important to try and instigate a community feel. The redevelopment's going on apace at Williston. That's planned in now for at least the next 5 years. They're doing 72 houses a year, and I think it is quite important that the tenants' voice is heard during that development, as it's a stressful time. So one other thing I'd like to see in relation to Williston is I'd like to see a tenants' association set up so the tenants have one single voice to actually get back the feedback on that redevelopment. I think government needs fundamental reform. I think they're top heavy at the moment. There's too many departments, there's too many ministers, and I think they need to actually change the way they actually approach things. Decisions take far too long to be made. By the time the decision's made, then the moment has passed. We only have to look at Douglas Promenade for that, where they've basically spent £1 million and not even got a spade into it. I mean, obviously I'll use social media as I always have. There'll be newsletters going out, and I'll also be holding constituency surgeries if I am elected, because I think that people do want to keep in touch. I mean, you hear the mantra every time. People say, oh, we vote the people, let them in, and we never see them for another 5 years until they want our vote again. I don't want to be, if I'm elected, that type of member. I want to stay in touch with the constituency and actually listen to people. As I've said, I've seen lots of slogans from different candidates, old and new, saying working with you, working together. And one thing that seems to be missing is them actually saying listening to you. And I think that's quite crucial. I think we're too reliant on certain sectors, for instance, e-gaming and finance. Nothing against those sectors, they've done very, very well, but it's just concerning that they're now such a high percent of our economy. I would like to go out to other industries such as research and development, which I think the island's perfectly suited to, and also some green energy such as tidal developments. Orkney's done very well out of its tidal developments since 2003, and there's also now developments in Northern Ireland in that regard as well, and I think the island could do very well. Well, obviously one of the big priorities is the public sector pensions. At the moment, they've still not resolved the issue. The cost envelope that they passed at June's Tynwald does not resolve anything. It just kicks the can further down the road. And that's not fair either on the general taxpayer or the civil servants who are also taxpayers, because at the end of the day, government's going to have to come back again in the future and actually say to the civil service, we need to change your scheme again. How is that fair to the employees of government when government needs to keep changing their scheme every 3 years? I have some sympathy for the last administration in the fact they have had a pretty torrid 5 years of what they inherited, but I think they've been their own worst enemy in terms of communication. I think their communication with the public has absolutely been abysmal, to be perfectly honest. They've put out mixed messages, and that has caused problems. There needs to be better communication from the next administration to the general public. In relation to preschool, I mean, I'm delighted they've actually upped the allowances now, but at the end of the day, those allowances are being paid effectively into private sector providers. I actually think it was actually perfectly feasible to continue the preschool education as part of the schools, and I think we're going to hit a point where actually what we're paying out is actually going to be more than any savings that were actually made by removing the preschools. I'm not convinced that the department has actually made the savings they claimed they were going to make, and in fact if I am elected it would be one of the first questions I put down in Tynwald. I think the budget should be front loaded towards the community policing, because that is where the police get most of their intelligence, and I know as a Douglas councillor that the community policing around Douglas has been first rate. But I think the police have suffered quite a few cuts over the last few years, and the Chief Constable's done a wonderful job, as have the day-to-day officers, trying to cope with that. I wouldn't actually see any further cuts in the police. I would vote against anything that came forward, because I think they've already done their share.
More music for the Isle of Man.
3FM.